This is Randy Picht, the Executive Director of the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute at the Missouri School of Journalism. And today we're going to be talking with one of our illustrious fellows this year, Emma Carew Grovum. There she is. Hello, Emma. How are you today?
Hi, Randy. I'm doing really well, thanks.
Great. So we had a great year of fellows, and so we want to talk about this particular fellowship because it is really something that we look for in a fellowship in terms of trying to address some challenging problems and looking for new ways to address them. And that's exactly what this is. And Emma's going to tell you all about it. She's got some great materials on the RJI website, a great slide deck that you can look at. But we're going to have an opportunity to ask her some questions about this new idea. One of the things, I don't want to talk the whole time, Emma, but one of the things, that we especially like about this project was that it came from a place of experience and knowledge about the subject. And it also, was just looking at things a little bit differently. So first question for you, Emma, is maybe you could just tell us kind of the origin story about how this project came to be for you.
Yeah, so well, thanks, Randy, for hosting this event and spotlighting the program. I'm really excited to talk about it today. This was Upward was born out of, I've spent kind of the last couple of years teaching and coaching and attending different leadership programs. So I've been through AAGA's Executive Leadership Program. I've been through Pointer's Women Digital Leadership Academy. I've taught in that program at Pointer. I've taught in a program called the Editorial Integrity Leadership Initiative through the Corporation for Broadcasting a couple of years ago. And I loved all of these programs because they were focused on building new leaders in journalism, which we desperately need. But where I saw a gap was I saw people, myself included, go back to newsrooms, go back to organizations full of new ideas and new energy and being really excited. And then ultimately their circumstances at work had not changed, only the candidate had changed. And so they would come back with these ideas and their bosses would be like, yeah, that's a great idea, but we need you to do your job first. Or that's super interesting. We'd love to give you a budget for that kind of a team, but we don't have money for that right now. And so you would see these folks coming back from these programs and being really frustrated that they couldn't implement their plans. They couldn't, do the stretch assignments they had thought about. And you saw a lot of folks leaving their newsrooms. And so you don't want these leadership programs to get like a reputation for being a golden ticket out of the newsroom, right? You want to help folks stay in their newsrooms so that they can become leaders. And so it was really, my work in DEI has showed me that there's a huge retention problem for journalists of color. Some of the research that I did at the beginning of my fellowship really expounded upon that, about the experience that journalists of color are having at the local level. And so how I designed the program was specifically about keeping journalists of color who have lots of talent and lots of passion and lots of potential so that they can grow into these roles before they get scooped up by the New York Times, the Washington Post with lots of money. So it's a retention play, it's a leadership accelerator. It's meant to serve both in journalists of color and their newsrooms.
Yeah, so let's talk about those kind of, those aspects. So I think three of the things that we really liked about the end result of which is Upward. One is its emphasis on leadership, not management. Not that there's anything wrong with management, but we like that. The other is that it's talking about moving up in an organization, not moving out of an organization. And then the third one is, I think, thinking about the goal that's immediately ahead, but also the one that's way down the road, so it doesn't ignore that either, or it doesn't, skip over skip over the one that's right in front of somebody. So how about if we talk about each one of those three things? So the idea about focusing on leadership and not management, how was that in terms of your cohort and just in terms of what you think about it?
So we had 6 folks in the first cohort. Some of them were already in their first leadership role, and some of them were about to kind of start the exploration process of what that might look like. And so it was great for them to see, I think, as a cohort, for those who were about to approach their first opportunity, to see the challenges that someone else who was, 6 months into her first role as a bureau chief or taken over as a new editor of a new team, see the challenges that they were facing. So I think it helped to create continuity. It helped to create, a bond between these members of these cohorts. And that is like the number one thing, right? Is it's not just that they get to go through this leadership curriculum, but that they get to bond with the other folks in their group. And hopefully they will stay together for the rest of their careers in some way, capacity or another. And then, you mentioned leadership, not management. I, firmly believe in individual contributors and the ability to be a good citizen of the newsroom, no matter what chair you sit in. I think that's very important. And I think it's a skill that is very undervalued by our news organizations. And so to help prepare folks, to give them these ideas around how do you support culture building, how do you support culture change transformation and things like that, I think was really helpful. No one teaches this kind of skill, and whether you're becoming a manager or not, there's still opportunities to lead and kind of show what you can do.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of new demands, that face leaders. So just having folks even be able to talk about the new stuff that comes up is of great value. So now let's talk about retention.
Yeah.
And the idea about, you can move up in your career and have a very nice career staying right where you are.
Yeah, I think, what I heard from journalists of color when I did my research was it's really hard out there. People are working very hard for very small salaries. They're on small staffs, they're thinly stretched. And about year 3, year 4, year 5, usually in the second job, folks are leaving the industry. We're losing journalists of color at a very high rate because they're not bridging that gap into leadership or into management or into a higher level IC type role. And so I thought that maybe if we could tell folks earlier, right? You're the future of this newsroom. You could be the next executive director here. You might be our next managing editor. This is the vision that our leadership team sees for you as a candidate. So that, in 3 years, 5 years, your salary is going to change such that you can buy a house in this town, such that you can afford to decide whether or not you want to have children and then decide whether or not you can afford to send them to schools in this community, right? That the adulting life kind of changes the prospect when you understand that you're not going to be making $30,000 for the rest of your life.
Yeah, right. That's right. And I think, the idea that you also can get some help from the organization you're in.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to just always be looking where the grass might be greener. Sometimes it's pretty green right where you are.
Absolutely. And I think that, all of our managers and all of our leadership and executive teams are also stretched very thin. So there's that, under perfect circumstances, there would be mentorship happening and sponsorship happening and career development for everybody. But what we know is it's not happening in a lot of newsrooms for a lot of really valid reasons. So the program really helps to not just prepare the candidates for their leadership roles, but also to teach the other folks in their organization how to cultivate this talent, how to rinse and repeat this process next year. They could send another person to me for Upward. They could just decide that they're gonna do better reviews for everybody or have more one-on-ones with everybody, and kind of that all boats rise sort of situation. And I'd love to see that in these newsrooms.
Yeah, and so the third one is kind of thinking of what's right in front of you, but also what's down the road. And I like that about the program where you talk about them, their individual situation, but also they need to keep thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to make this place better as I move up.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your thinking about that?
Yeah, I think, for today's journalists, you don't enter this industry lightly. You don't come in thinking it's going to be cushy and marvelous and, just shiny like the movies. I think you come into this thinking you want to save journalism. You want to contribute to sustainability. You want to contribute to the bottom line and create value so that your news organization continues to exist. And I think that that's a drive that many of us who have come out of school in the last, say, 5, 10, 15 years have really owned. And so I think that comes into play here, right? Is that you have a younger workforce that tends to not stay in newsrooms very long. A year is very common. 18 months is very common. I myself have never been anywhere longer than 3 years. The days of, a 25-year career at a single news organization are long behind us, I think, for most folks coming up today. And so this is a way for news organizations to get the most time with these folks that they can. Not every paper, not every public radio station is going to be a destination for somebody, but there's no reason that can't be a productive stop along their way in their journey.
Yeah, that's good. So, Emma, we've done this exactly backwards because we've talked about how tremendous this program is, but we haven't talked about the actual program.
Yeah, should I share my screen and bring the deck up?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
And everybody watch this and don't forget what we just talked about.
So this is Upward, and I'm super excited about it. So the theory is, what might journalism look like with a generation of journalists of color who are ready to lead? I came to this problem statement, hearing from editors, we can't find people who want to make the transition from journalist to editor, from individual contributor to manager. And so I thought about, what if I helped populate this? It's not a pipeline issue, it's a pool issue, right? And so the solution I came up with was Upward, and this is my RJI Fellowship. So Upward is a 6-month group coaching and individual coaching program for journalists of color who work in local news. The candidates are supported by a core team of their fellow fellows, their coach, who in this instance was me, their direct manager, and an executive sponsor from their newsroom. And then again, the program helps them prepare with leadership skills they can start using today, while also helping them build out longer-term plans and goals for themselves in their newsroom. So at the end of the program, everyone puts together a personal leadership plan that they're going to work with their manager to help implement and put into place. So this is the team. These are the folks that we landed with for the first year, and I am super proud of every single one of them. 6 folks from 6 newsrooms, 2 major metro papers, 2 public radio stations, a TV station, and an online startup. 3 were newly minted leaders in their companies and had started a role in the last 6 months. 1 actually changed jobs during the course of the program. She decided to leave local television for a comms role in higher ed. And what she did was she said, this is how I keep my sanity. This is how I'm going to be able to return to journalism someday. I have to take this storytelling job outside of the industry to rest my soul, rest my mind, and recharge a little bit. And then 2 were also eyeing positions of change within the year. 1 has a pretty firm commitment from their employer. The other one is still kind of figure out what exactly that might look like. So these are some quotes from the fellows that describe their own growth. Excuse me. We used Kat's wonderful tactic of posting a Medium post about what it is you're looking for a new hire, and she was able to increase her pool of applicants and ultimately make a hire based on that Medium post. And that was something we talked about in the training. Another one of the folks decided to pursue her MBA, and she's looking at not just ways to do formal training for her MBA, but also ways to get other boot camps and other types of support from her company to help her pivot from an editorial role to a hybrid editorial and recruitment role. The managers, I asked them how they described their fellows, and they saw confidence, they saw valuing of their voice, they saw folks becoming much more organized at their weekly meetings. Many of these folks are being asked to lead meetings and they've never been taught how to do that before. So we talked a lot about meeting agendas and follow-up and who takes the notes and how to facilitate a meeting that's really effective. And so it was great to see that these things carried through and that they were able to see these changes in their folks. So the ideal newsroom for Upward is a newsroom where their primary coverage is local. Any size of newsroom is eligible, but they must be able to support the emerging leader for at least 6 to 18 months. So like if you know you're going through a merger, or you think you're going through bankruptcy, or your editor-in-chief is going to be out on mat leave for 9 months, might not be the right time. But if you are in a place where you're like, yes, we can support somebody and provide an executive sponsor and provide a direct manager who can be engaged, that's the perfect size newsroom. And finally, any format of publication is eligible. We had newspapers, we had public radio stations, we had digital onlys, and happy to accept all types of newsrooms into this program. So the perfect journalist is someone who's maybe in 6 months into their new role, or likely to be promoted in the next 6 to 18 months. Usually it's someone who's been with publication about 2 to 5 years, so not too new, but not too tenured, interested in remaining in the publication, and that leadership sees this person becoming a top leader no matter where they go throughout their career. The core team is what kind of makes this program special, is that you have your coach, your direct manager, your executive sponsor, and your cohort all cheering you on and working through the toolbox to build a better leader. We learned a lot from this first year, and so we're iterating for Upward 2.0. A couple of things that we're going to change are adding a Strengths Finder assessment, more one-on-one support for the fellows, kickoff and closeout meetings with the manager and sponsor. We did kind of like one-on-ones, but we didn't do groups necessarily, that I'd love to do. We'll have 6 coaching sessions and 6 guest speakers, as well as more robust Slack support for both the managers and the fellows throughout. So that's a little bit about Upward and where we're headed next. This is a light budget for somebody, if anyone is curious about how we spend the money. We are, for example, partnering with the local news lab at Elon University, and we will be focusing on 6 North Carolina newsrooms this fall, which we're super excited about. And so I'm looking for folks who are interested in nominating a newsroom colleague for a program starting in 2023, interested in becoming a host newsroom, or looking for funding partially in whole or from a partner next year. Again, it would be about $75,000 to run the program twice, and that would be 6 folks in each program. So that's me, and that's a little bit about Upward.
Yeah, that's great. And just in case folks missed that, you do have a second cohort that's starting in the fall in North Carolina.
Yep.
And what is kind of your timeline in terms of how many of these could you do? They're 6 months, so two at a time, or
could run 2 at a time. Would probably look at hiring a second coach in that capacity. 6 people at a time, 12 people a year is a pretty small number. Would love to see the program eventually be running, 3 coaches at a time or 4 coaches at a time to run, cohorts consecutively and in parallel. But that, of course, is a funding issue, not a bandwidth and motivation issue.
And so the first time around, what were those monthly meetings or those regular meetings that you were having? Were there, commonly talked about subjects?
We split it a couple of ways, where the first half of the session, I would usually bring in like a presentation about something that I wanted them to learn for the week, for the month. And then we would pivot halfway through and we would do like lightning round consulting. So somebody would bring an issue from their newsroom and everyone would sit down for 5 minutes and come up with solutions for this person, right? Not necessarily like, I think I can solve this for you, but have you tried X? Have you tried Y? Really taking this problem and looking at it from 6 other people's points of view. And that was really helpful for people to understand, like, oh, this is a problem I might have in my newsroom. Here's how 5 other people might solve it. And then they got to take that with them. They talked a lot about, collaborating with their colleagues at the leadership level as a new leader. They talked about, navigating the space as a new leader with their executive teams when promises are made or ideas are thrown out on the table about who's going to do what or what it's going to look like. I think we've all gotten those kind of, yeah, great, go ahead and do it kind of thumbs up from a boss before, but then the execution doesn't always come through. So we talked a lot about how to like move their ideas forward and pitch their ideas in a way that their bosses can engage with the material and not just give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down and wave them away at the end of the day. So yeah, what I liked was they were from so many different types of newsrooms, but ultimately they shared so many of the same challenges around imposter syndrome, around building executive presence, running meetings, project management, all that kind of stuff came into play.
And do you think that you didn't mention stress? Do you think that the cohort kind of helped keep that down?
I would like to hope so. One of our cohort members lost a close family member during the program, and we were able to, send flowers and kind of just rally support around this person. And I think that was very, that's the culture I wanted to build with this program, right? That it's not just, oh, we meet once a month and we talk about work, but these people who will hopefully continue to follow each other through their lives and support each other inside of work and outside of work, in these roles, in these newsrooms, wherever they go next. And so, yeah, stress was definitely a big thing for all of them, but I'm so grateful that they were able to carve out the time to join the program and keep coming back. And, it was the first time we had done it, so scheduling could be a little wonky sometimes, and to manage my schedule against their schedules and bringing in speakers. But that was another pivot we did midway through, was I had given them kind of coach list time to see what would happen if they just self-organized. They didn't like it. So after the first two, we pivoted the program and I started bringing in guest speakers. So I brought in my fellow fellows like Cece Way and Hannah Wise, and they talked about things like executive presence, project management, time management, things like that. Paid them, which was great because I'm a big fan of folks who speak at programs like this being paid, and that's budgeted for next year as well. And yeah, I just think that was a big help for folks to not just connect with themselves across the industry, but outside of that circle as well.
Yeah, and I think the idea about, the value of cohorts is actually interesting because, we really appreciate you carving out the time to be a RJI fellow and participate in your own cohort. And it's nice to hear that your fellow fellows were of help in getting your project going. So
yeah, could not have done it without them.
Well, that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to add anything else, or?
I don't think so. I'm pretty excited about where we're headed. I'm pretty excited about what we accomplished in just 9 months of the fellowship. And I hope folks are interested either in connecting me with other journalists of color at the local level who might be interested in Upward. My goal is to always keep this program tuition free for the newsroom, because some of the newsrooms that I want to target are small and rural, or small and local, and may not have the ability to cough up $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 for a program like this. And so that is partially why I'm seeking institutional funding and partnership funding and things like that to help me keep it free for the newsrooms.
Yeah, I guess we should have added that. That's why we're raising the money to keep it free.
Keep it free.
Keep it free. So okay. Well, this has been terrific, Emma. And anybody who needs to get in touch with her, there's information in the chat. You can go to RJI and search her name. She's got a wonderful deck. The deck you saw is there, so you can go watch it as many times as you want. And I guess let's all have a good weekend.
Thanks so much, Randy. I appreciate you so much. And the center and the Institute. This has been a wonderful fellowship, and I would highly recommend anyone out there who wants to learn about something cool to do the fellowship.
Great. Thank you, Emma.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.